Hi, and we're back with George Byers. He is the Vice President of Government and Community Relations for Rare Element Resources. George, why don't you tell us a little bit about where Rare Element Resources came from?
Well, the company exists because of the fact that up here 9 miles due north of Sundance, Wyoming, where we are today, is one of the most unique mineral deposits in probably the whole Western Hemisphere, and it's the Bear Lodge Critical Rare Earth Deposit. The deposit was initially discovered back in the late 1940s, and over a series of explorations and companies that came and went over a half of a century, more and more information began to be learned about the unique mineral assemblage you've got up here. And it was finally determined that you've got a very unique deposit of rare earths. Initial exploration thought it was a gold property. Others thought, well, it's a uranium property. Others thought maybe we have molybdenum. Companies came in looking at it as copper. But it has evolved into the fact that none of those other minerals are there in any sort of economic amount, but rare earths are. So Rare Element Resources was created in 2004 to explore and take to production this very unique mineral property.
Okay, so I guess this would be a good time to let everybody know, what are these rare elements?
Well, rare earths, and I like to use my prop, my cell phone. My cell phone cannot function without at least 9 rare earths. This is a Samsung. Others are made elsewhere by other companies, but the Japanese call rare earths the seeds of technology. Rare earth elements, and there are 15 of them, elements 57 to 71 on your periodic table. I'm sure,
which we all know very well.
You have a periodic table on your refrigerator door. But elements 57 to 71, they have 3 unique characteristics. They have phosphorescent characteristics. The fluorescent lighting above us, every fluorescent light in the world has europium, and we believe we have the best europium deposit in the world at Bear Lodge. So phosphorescent properties, catalytic properties, fluid cracking catalysts. Every refinery in the world has to have lanthanum and cerium to help crack crude into other useful fuels. And the third is magnetic, and tiny magnets are made possible by 3 of the elements, and these enable things like cell phones to work. Things like if you've got an F-150 or if you fly an F-35, you need rare earth magnets to make those work. If you're doing medical imaging, you need rare earth magnets. They have a wide variety of applications, and so those 3 reasons, phosphorus, catalysts, and magnets, those are the 3 things that rare earths do. The problem today, China produces over 90% of all of them. There are only 2 primary rare earth mines in the world that are not in China. One's in Western Australia, one's in the Mojave Desert of California. We will be only the 3rd when we get into production in 2017.
And so that leads, obviously, so China has control over a large portion of the rare earths that are out there in the market right now. What kind of power does that give them?
In about 1986, Chinese Premier Deng Xiaoping made a comment, the Middle East has oil, China has rare earths. And he just sort of let that comment hang out there. He didn't say what was next, but he just let everybody else think about it, and what the implication was. And we can use rare earths, we China, can use rare earths as an economic weapon. So we saw this sort of happen in 2010. October 2010, China embargoed all rare earth exports from China. And it sent a panic into the technology world. Prices of some elements went up between 5,000 and 6,000% in just a few weeks. They've all come back down now, but That's the type of pricing power and economic power China holds. And again, these elements are important to telecommunications. They're important to, say, our Defense Department and to clean energy. So that's why our company has had a great deal of interest from the U.S. Department of Defense and the U.S. Department of Energy because the Bear Lodge project is the most advanced non-Chinese project in the world for rare earths.
All right. Now, we've talked a lot about the importance of this on a global scale and on a national scale. How about locally? What will this site do for Sundance, for Crook County, for Northeast Wyoming?
Well, it's going to bring in some job potential, obviously, and it's going to bring in tax revenues. We're going to have two pieces of the project. One will be a small mine, and I want to emphasize small. In terms of mines, this is going to be a quarry-sized operation. It's not going to be like a Powder River Basin coal mine. It's not going to be like, if people are familiar with copper mines in Nevada or Arizona, or gold mines in Nevada. It's not going to be on that scale. It's going to be a small mine, but it's going to be a very unique commodity coming out of that mine. Down in Upton, Wyoming, we will have a very unique chemical plant. We call it the hydrometallurgy plant, where the ore is going to be reduced into a very high purity concentrate, 97% plus pure. We have tested our process at labs in the U.S. and in Canada and in Australia. This process has produced a concentrate that's very valuable, very pure. We have sent it out to potential customers saying, here's what our results show, tell us what you think, and they've all come back and agreed, yes, you have good stuff here.
And just recently, you were asked to join a rather unique group. I believe it was the Critical Materials or Critical Minerals Institute. Is that correct?
Yes, it's called the Critical Materials Institute. This is a unit of the U.S. Department of Energy. It involves, it's headed by the Department of Energy's Ames Laboratory at Ames, Iowa, on Iowa State University's campus, but it's got three other national labs: Lawrence Livermore National Lab in California, Oak Ridge National Lab, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and the Idaho National Lab in Idaho Falls are the four labs that are involved, but it includes other companies, companies you may have heard of like General Electric, and we have been invited to join. And the reason, again, I'll go back, the reason we were invited to join the Critical Materials Institute is because the U.S. DOE, the Department of Energy, understands a couple of things about our project. Number one, we have a process that is exceptional and gives a very high purity product. But number two, and it goes back to the periodic table, all rare earth deposits aren't really created equal. What we have at Bear Lodge are 5 critical rare earth elements that are really the ones that are of the highest value and that are in the most demand. And unfortunately, China produces essentially 100% of them. So these 5 rare earth elements, principally magnet elements, are the ones that are most susceptible to supply disruption. We will produce all 15 elements, but we have a higher grade of 5 of them than the other 2 non-Chinese deposits in the world. So our process, our high grade, and the fact that we have 5 critical elements, and fourth being how far we are along in the permitting process, that those 4 ingredients have led us to be invited to join the Critical Materials Institute.
Now, you mentioned the permitting process. Next question I was going to go, what have been some of the hurdles that you've had to climb over in order to even reach where you are right now?
Well, we're on Forest Service land, so an environmental impact statement was determined to be necessary. We realized many years ago that an EIS, Environmental Impact Statement, was going to be required up here. So we began our baseline data collection years ago, making sure that it would be at a high enough level that it would support going into and being the basis for an environmental impact statement. But we have more than just the Forest Service. We have to get permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, as all of the coal mines have to do. Each rare earth deposit has a little bit of uranium and a tiny bit more of thorium. We got a minuscule amount of uranium, but we have a little bit more of thorium, so we have to get a permit from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It's called a license to possess source material. We began working on that piece of the permitting pie back in May of 2012. It's well underway. We have to get 2 main permits from the state of Wyoming. One is the mining permit from the Wyoming DEQ's Land Quality Division, and the other is the industrial siting permit from the DEQ's Industrial Siting Division. So the schedule for everything, we've been told by the Forest Service, you will get a draft EIS this winter. It's looking like we're hoping December. It may go into January of 2015. We're still on schedule, according to the Forest Service, for a final EIS and a record of decision in the 4th quarter of 2015. So about 15 months from now, we should have a final EIS, a record of decision. We hope also all of the other permits will come together at approximately that same time, which will enable us to begin construction 2016, kick it off then, commission the project late in 2016, go up into full production in 2017.
You mentioned that it's going to be a small, quarry-sized mine, and that it's not going to be similar to the copper mines in Nevada and other places. What is it about this facility that is going to make it different?
Well, what's going to make it, well, one of the reasons it's going to be so small is the ore body is small to begin with. It's the throat of about a 40-million-year-old volcano is what is containing the rare earths. The surface expression of the throat of that volcano is not great to begin with, but we will have a small mine, a plant that will upgrade slightly the ore. The ore is, the term is friable. Where the rare earths concentrate, it's like the consistency of a hard dirt clod. You can take it in your fist and crumble it, so we're not going to have a very expensive mill. We will truck that material to Upton, 10 or so trucks a day, just over the highway, sand, gravel type trucks. We can recycle our chemicals down at Upton, recycle our water. The plant will be at the hill, will be a zero discharge facility, and so will the plant at Upton.
So by zero discharge facility?
Zero discharge, I'm talking about water, yeah. And we've got a very elegant process that we've filed 2 patent applications on. A third is out there. One of these days we'll probably file patent protection for it too. But it allows us to recycle our water, recycle almost all of our reagents that we will use down at the plant at Upton. This will keep our operating expenses low. It will keep our capital expenditure for the mine is going to be slightly less than $300 million. There are other projects out there in the world that are coming on, and they have CapEx proposed. One project is $1.5 billion, one is $2.6 billion. We're going to come in at a fraction of those. And again, we're farther along in the whole process, in the whole permitting process, plus we have a metallurgy process that works. So those things make us different, plus the fact that we have those 5 critical elements in high enough grade that we can be an answer to the Chinese dominance, particularly in those 5 elements.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think the best thing to add here is how much we've been welcomed here I mean, even you're over in Campbell County. Campbell County, the commission has given us a resolution in favor of our project. We didn't even ask for it. They came to us. How would you guys like a resolution in favor? We have been welcomed in Crook County, welcomed in Weston County. The legislature has done things that we don't even request, particularly on the research end as they apply to the University of Wyoming. They have given research monies to the university to take a look at rare earths. And the most recent surprise is the Governor Meade's office in May announced this value-added industry plan for the state of Wyoming. How can Wyoming, instead of shipping all of our commodities around the country and around the world, how can we make better use of them here and put higher value added to those commodities? In the press release that announced this in May, it mentioned rare earths. So what they envision for us, perhaps, is something like this. One of the ingredients in the whole supply chain for rare earths, and America's, this whole Critical Materials Institute that you mentioned earlier, its role is how can the Critical Materials Institute and the U.S. Department of Energy, with industry and with academic institutions, how can we recreate this supply chain, this whole rare earth supply chain in America? It's so important to American technology. So they are going to take a look at how we can use our concentrate and take the next step. Mining, it's one thing, that's really easy to do. The hydrometallurgy plant is a little more difficult to do. The third thing is what's really hard. It's sort of the holy grail of the whole rare earths supply chain, is how do you separate those 15 elements, one from the other from the other? America had that capacity until about between 1995 and the year 2000, when China came in a slump in the rare earths world and bought that technology away. America needs to recreate the separation piece of the technology. The folks at the Idaho National Lab, folks at the Critical Materials Institute believe with the high grade and the purity of our concentrate that they have the capacity to help create a separation path. And I think one of the goals, how do we engage the University of Wyoming in that too? So that's another neat step. Wyoming is very forward-looking. You got leadership here in the state that, in the legislature and in state government, that doesn't kind of look from day to day. They look generationally out. What can this mean? Not for kids, but for a couple of generations of grandkids. And this is one of the pieces of it they're looking at.
Excellent. Well, George, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.